Welcome back to the Nest Peeps. In today's video, we're going to make some more progress on that Gatorman army. I have been slacking as of late on painting up the Gatorman army that I started. So I decided it was time to paint the posse. I have 2 units of posse for my Gatorman army. They don't seem like they would be super difficult to paint. They're just scales and a weapon, really. The leader has feathers, but that's about as complicated as these sculpts get. Now, I'm not saying that these are bad sculpts. I absolutely love the sculpts for the Gatorman Posse. They just don't have a bunch of filigree and extra nonsense going on. They're just kind of straight and to the point, and I appreciate that. However, I was not a fan of the spear tips on the weapons for the posse, so I snipped those off and replaced them with some extra Iron Jaws weapons bits that I had in the bits box. I know that these weapons look kind of huge and ridiculous with these models, but that's kind of what I'm going for, and I honestly love it. The more pieces to this army that I paint and put together, the more Ninja Turtle vibes I'm getting from this paint scheme in this army. It all kind of is ringing Donatello to me. I guess that's because of the purple that I chose for the cloth. I'm really digging it, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think I may have inadvertently went with the Ninja Turtles paint scheme. But I'm cool with that. But enough of that. Let's get to painting the Gators. As is tradition, all of these Gators were primed with a zenithal highlight. And here you can see me applying the Ardennes green from scale 75 as the base coat. And I must apologize for the horrible camera angle where my hand is in the way this entire time. Then we hit everything with the dark tone wash of the airbrush to make that Ardennes green just a slight shade darker. Once our Gators have dried, we load up some of that Ardennes green onto our dry brush. Once we have just the right amount of paint on our brush, we apply this to all of our Gators. This is going to take us up back from the wash that we had applied with the dry brush. This will give a nice depth to all of those cracks in between the scales. Now it's time to highlight those body scales, and we're going to do that by loading up some Irati green from scale 75 onto our dry brush. Then in a downward sweeping motion, we hit all of our Gators. This will give us our brightest highlight in only the highest most portions of these models, which would be where most light would normally be hitting. Time to start on the yellow belly. First thing we do is we base coat all of the bellies with Sherwood green from scale 75. This took me about 3 coats per Gator, but I was expecting that considering the nature of painting yellow. It's a notoriously hard color to paint, and at this point, I've just kind of accepted that. Then, in a move that looks like it ruined everything we just did, we apply a dark tone wash to all of the bellies. This is going to be what establishes our darkest shadows for these belly scales. Then, again with a dry brush, I come back in with the Sherwood green to start building the highlights back up on these belly scales. Finally, I layer in a couple passes of fall green from scale 75 to bring out the brightest highlight of these belly scales. Now that we're done with the bellies, it's time to go topside, and we lay down a base coat of matte black from Army Painter. Making sure I do my 2 thin coats and taking my time around the edges so I don't get any of this black paint on those green scales we just spent all that time on. Time for a pedicure. Now we're going to cut in the black base coat for all of the fingernails and toenails. And we're busting out that dry brush again. This time we're loading it up with some black forest green from scale 75. We're going to apply this to all of the back scales on our Gators to give a highlight to the black carapace, while still letting the carapace read as black. Then we come in with a dark tone wash, and this is to kill that chalky look that dry brushing can sometimes give you. Next up, we paint anything that is wooden on our gators with Vallejo Game Color Heavy Brown. Time to give those fingernails some attention again. We're going to give them a highlight with some cold gray from Vallejo. Just taking my time and using this as an opportunity to practice my edge highlighting. I decided to paint in all the bone areas next, and I base coated that with Iraqi sand from Vallejo Model Color. When it comes to painting bone, Iraqi sand has quickly become my favorite base coat. Now it's time to paint the big choppies, and we're going to do this by base coating all of our blades with a gunmetal from Vallejo. Then we take some platinum silver from Vallejo Game Color and we apply that to all of the edges of our blades. This is to help accentuate that taper and give the blades a little bit more contrast. Next, I'm applying a dry brush of off-white to all of the bone sections on our leader models. This is going to set us up for success with our wash step later. When it came to dry brushing these staff skulls, I was able to be a little careless because I didn't have to worry about messing anything else up that was around it. Once all that sloppy dry brushing has been completed, I come back in with that heavy brown and I cut all the ropes back in that are tying these bones to the necklace. I needed to figure out somewhere to put purple on these models, and the best place seems to be the wrappings that connect the blades to their handles. I base coat these wrappings with some alien purple from Army Painter. It's one of my favorite purples out there. And I apply a stippled highlight of ooze purple from Army Painter to make these wrappings look a little bit worn. I also needed a place to apply our turbo door paint that we have in this paint scheme, and I figured these little rivets that are added on to the ends of these blades would be the perfect accent. So to prep them, we base coat them with black from Army Painter. Once the black base coat has dried, we come in with our Shell Shocked from Turbo Dork, and my camera absolutely refused to focus on this weapon, so I apologize for that. Then I jump back over to the leader model and I start base coating all these feathers with Cantabric Blue from Scale 75. I feel like Scale 75 is trolling us with some of these color names. And then I attempt to blend in some ooze purple on the tips of these feathers here. I was hoping this would make the feathers a little bit more visually appealing. Now we take some dark red from Vallejo Model Color and we base coat the inside of all of our gators' mouths, making sure to even get the side sections of the mouths over here. Again, I am trying my hardest not to get any of this red on our green. Now that our wet blending has dried, we come in with some Caribbean Blue from Scale 75 and we apply that with a dry brush over our feathers to give us our brightest highlight. And as we're applying this dry brush, you can see that below it, you can still see that transition from blue to purple. So this gives a nice bit of visual variety to these feathers. Now we apply a highlight of squid pink to all of our fleshy mouth pieces. The corners of the mouth, the tongue, the little dangly ball in the back of the throat, all of it gets a highlight of squid pink. And with some off-white from Vallejo, I start cutting in all of our teeth. Painting teeth is a pain in the rear end. They're super tiny, and it takes like 5 coats to get a solid covering. Back to the weapons, and we're applying a dark tone wash to all of our metallic bits. trying to wash a little bit of it away when it comes to the blade edge. We're also going to apply this wash to the pommels of all of our weapons. And with a strong tone wash from Army Painter, we apply that to all of our wooden handles and staves, anything that we painted with that heavy brown from Game Color. Next up in the wash rotation is the mouth, and we are going to wash all these fleshy bits with red tone wash from Army Painter. This is going to tie that squid pink into that dark red and making it look more fleshy with minimal effort. And then we take some soft tone wash from Army Painter and we apply that to all of our bone areas. This really ties all the bone together and gives it that sun-dried look. We also apply that soft tone wash to all of our teeth because bright white teeth on gators just doesn't look right. Next up, we have already base coated our eyes in white, and we're going to come in with some fluorescent magenta from Vallejo and glaze that into the eyes. The glaze will flow into the recesses, leaving the center of the eye the brightest. For the bases, I've painted the base rims black, and what you see me doing here is I am sketching in the puddles for our water effect. And we're going to sketch this in with some Ardennes green and then some field gray from scale 75 along the borders of our puddles. And this is where we will be applying our water texture later on in the basing process. Then I use my fancy schmancy little squeeze bottle here to apply my PVA glue in preparation for the sand application. Even with this little nozzle, I can't get everywhere, so I use a little gunked up brush that I have to push the glue around to all the areas where I want the sand to adhere. And then I sprinkle on the sand like you would apply glitter to a second grade art project. Once all of the sand has dried, we hit it all with a dark tone wash from Army Painter. This will help the sand look more like soil. Then I pull out the sheet of dead grass tufts and I liberally apply that to the base. You can apply the tufts to your liking. I tend to go a little bit heavy on the tuft application. I feel like in a swamp you're going to have all kinds of random patches of dead or soggy vegetation all over the place. Next, I take a stick from some millet from my budgies that I painted up with some leather brown, and I glue this down to the base with some of it hanging into our little puddle there. And I apply a painted up skull to each of the bases for the grunts to kind of tie the bone theme in with the leader's staff. After everything has been matte varnished, it's time to bust out the Vallejo water texture. You're going to want to do 2 to 3 coats of this, but what you do is you put a little dab in the area that you want to be liquefied, and then I'll push it around with a janky brush to make sure all of the puddle has some of the water texture on there. Once that water texture has dried, you've got some completed gators here. Seeing the unit together like this really looks fantastic to me. And the blue on the staff and the headdress of the leader makes it so you're never going to lose track as to where your leader model is. And then when you put all 10 of these gators together, it just looks absolutely incredible. As you can see, I went a little bit overboard with the detail for a unit in Warmachine. But I kind of really got into the zone while painting these guys. I really enjoyed this project a lot, and I feel like it shows. I honestly couldn't ask for these gators to have come out any better. If you guys haven't noticed, with a lot of my paint jobs, I use a lot of dry brushing. I am a big proponent of dry brushing when it comes to miniature painting. I feel like it's good for a lot more applications than it's given credit for, and if used selectively, you can get some fantastic results with dry brushing. But let me know what you think of this project in the comment section down below. That's all for this video, peeps. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that other social media stuff. As for now, I've got to fly. As always, keep on painting, peeps.